Good morning. Welcome to today's community briefing. My name is Gregory Sneed. Today is the 10th of April in 2025, and we just a few weeks ago passed our 5-year anniversary. So we've been bringing this message to the community on all types of topics for 5+ years now. As we head into the beginning and early stages of our 6th, we're glad you're here today. Our guest today is Marvetta Bozeman, and she'll be joining us momentarily. Hey, there she is. She just arrived. Breaking news. And she is
Hello,
in the
hello.
house.
It's like I was on this Google Meet. I'm like, it said, host is waiting to let you in. I'm like, okay, where's everybody? Then you text me. So you had a Google Meet, and then you also had the Zoom link.
You were in the wrong room. As the expression goes, you were in the wrong room. You're all by yourself. You were in charge. So, again, my name is Gregory Sneed, CEO of Lifesaver Financial Services, helping my clients to keep more of the money that they make. And now it's my pleasure to welcome to the virtual stage. Oh yeah, and then April is Financial Literacy and Capability Month. So this is the month to get your money together and get
Yes.
back on speaking terms with your money. So now my pleasure to bring to the virtual stage Miss Crystal Mitchell.
Hello, everyone. Glad to have you. Glad you're here. I'm excited to meet our guest today, as I am always excited to meet all our guests. So thank her for agreeing to come on and share her wisdom and knowledge with us. And yes, the community briefing's been on the air for 5 years. This was an inspiration that started during a critical crisis in 2020. And it looks like in 2024, we have another critical crisis. So, boy, we every 5 years is not going to be pretty, I guess. So we got to learn some how-tos to deal with this. But yeah, this is the platform was created for this very reason, so that we can know how to survive during all of these critical times and things that can affect our whole country. But when it affects us in even drastic. What do they say? If the America gets a cold, the Black community gets pneumonia. So we want to try to, if we see if we can hold back pneumonia, and we just have a severe cold. How about that? And so I'm excited to be here. So I'm Crystal Mitchell, and I am the co-director of Recycling Black Dollars, as well as a business consultant and coach for many of the organizations in the city. I help individuals make sure that they're business ready, bank loan ready, and contract ready. And this platform is sponsored by powered and sponsored by Recycling Black Dollars and the BBA, the Black Business Association, and monetarily sponsored, as well as monetarily sponsored by them too. Los Angeles LDC, Southern California Edison, PCR, and Wells Fargo Bank, and Urban Excellence. And we want to thank you for joining us today. And with that, we have a fantastic team. One of our team members is not here at the moment, but Ms. Robin Billups, and either she will be in later or she'll see you next week. And Greg has already introduced himself. And Mr. Stephen Turner, he is the producer, and he goes out and finds these amazing guests and makes sure that they get here. And so we're always thrilled that is happening. So I want to welcome you. This is financial literacy, financial awareness. There's another word you use, Greg.
Capability.
Financial capability. So these are all important. I have a quick thing to share because I thought this was pretty awesome. This weekend, I spoke for financial capability and literacy and legacy with the National Coalition of Black Women. And I was one of the panelists. And then I looked and I saw, as she came into the room, one of my students, when she was 8 years old, she was in biz camp, and she had created this amazing business idea to teach financial literacy to teens like herself. And so now she's on her pathway, and she is graduating with a double major from USC, business and econ. And I actually got to share the stage and a platform with a former student whose idea came from a program of mine, and I call that legacy. And so it was really pretty exciting to do that because that's where my educator's place. That's like the highest compliment, right? So with that, I'm going to kick it back over. Stephen, I guess, is going to say hello at the end, and kick it back over to Greg so he can introduce us to our guests.
Right on, right on. So it was interesting. There was a study showing how the familiarity and comfortableness with money and financial literacy was actually on the decline. You would think with all the information availability out there that it would be increasing. But our younger generation is actually treating money in a less capable way than our parents and grandparents. So there's certain things that we were going to be doing intentionally to do that, and being better with money and wealth. And one way to create wealth is through real estate. So that is one of the primary ways of transferring wealth to future generations. And I'm sure we'll be hearing a little bit about that in coming moments. Our guest today is Marvetta Bozeman. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yes, you are.
Okay, fantastic. And she is an enthusiastic and dedicated real estate broker with several areas of success within private and corporate settings. She's an agent of superb operational strategies for direct management services, including extensive budget and marketing skills. She's performance-driven, consumer-focused, recognized for reliability, satisfaction, and measurable results in operational performance. So she is currently the Chief Executive Officer, CEO. Sometimes I call myself the Chief Everything Officer, and Real Estate Solutions and Mission Bound Real Estate and Business Academy. She looks to be in the Atlanta metropolitan area, so she'll share more about that with us and tell us later where she's from. We didn't get a chance to find out where she born and raised. But she's been doing that since January 2019. She was also with DeVoe Real Estate, a principal broker. She has a consulting group called Sole, S-O-L-E, and she'll tell us more about the consulting services that she offers. She was a community manager with Aimco. She's with Miles Property as a community manager, assistant manager with Wesley. I don't know what that is. She attended Mercer University and got her master's in science in organizational leadership and change and development. Also at Mercer University, a bachelor's of applied sciences, the University of Georgia Human Resources Management Certificate, and Walden University Doctorate of Business Administration, BA Business Administration, and that was about 7-8 years ago. So please join me in welcoming to the virtual stage, Marvetta Bozeman.
Well, hello, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. It has been a long day already. This week, one of the things that he didn't mention is you see the background with Empire Board of Realtists. So we're having this week-long Realtist Week. We're part of the National Association of Real Estate Brokers, where we advocate for democracy in housing. We've been around since 1947. Our local board since 1939. So I'm actually the president of the local board. So I have been pulled in all of these events all week to celebrate Realtist Week, which my passion out of everything that he just read that I've done is my current role to advocate for democracy in housing. And it's based because of what we're talking about here, and it's the wealth piece and building generational wealth. Right now, as you all know, we do have a housing crisis that's going on. And like Crystal said, when everybody else catches the cold, we catch pneumonia in both lungs, right? So that's what's happening now with us in housing. Our numbers are lower than they were when the Fair Housing Act was actually established. So it's crisis time right now. So we're in full-fledged mode to react. This is Fair Housing Month in April. So we are, rolling up the boots, putting everybody on the ground and like, let's get out here and make sure that we do express the need of housing within our community. What we are seeing is we know that for us, there's no generational wealth that's passed down. A lot of the silver spoons just didn't come to us. I didn't get one, but we do know that that is a way that we can obtain wealth, through home ownership. Most of us that have bought properties, 10, 20 years ago, when we look at that equity, that's some of the money that we'll be able to utilize to send the kids to college, to pay off debts, to vacation, and to live when we can't get out here and work anymore. So we really are pushing that. We're pushing the importance of insurance policies. Or even as we pass on, our grandparents pass on, we're giving our communities away by saying, hey, we don't want to deal with it. So Mr. and Mrs. Investor, come into our community, buy our properties for penny on the dollar, and then there goes our neighborhood. So it's a lot going on right now in housing, and I'm blessed that God saw fit to put me in this space so I can speak to it, and I can make sure that people that look like me have these opportunities to have a piece of the pie.
Great. I didn't realize that this realtist and realtor thing was going on nationwide, because certainly the LA group is
Yes.
doing something, and I'm going to be attending a financial literacy
Mhm.
seminar or something by the California Board of Realtists, uh,
Yes.
which is coming up Saturday. So
Yeah, well, Saturday, and guys, check us out on NAREB.com, because it's 100 cities. We're trying to break a world record here. 100 cities, same date, same time. We're all having a community day in different cities, where we'll be talking about what to do with Big Mama's house, the ABCs of home ownership. We'll be discussing women in real estate, men in real estate, getting your credit together. Like, we have programs where a lot of the lenders and community advocates will be out with giving $40,000 to $60,000 away with down payment assistance, all on this Saturday in different municipalities. California is actually the state of our incoming president. He will be sworn in July. So I will be out there in July for the national conference, but it's going down across the nation. So we're getting people out. We're just having them drop into the community day wherever they are for this information, valuable information. Some people don't even know that there's resources out there for down payment assistance. I had 2 clients this month. One is getting $45,000 and another one is getting $60,000. And they're thinking, some people feel as if their income guidelines, some are, some are not, but we're trying hard to stabilize our communities, because I don't know where everyone is from, but they are coming in our community in droves and pushing us out. So we're like, not on our watch.
yeah,
So
same
we're
thing here.
making sure,
Mhm.
yes, yeah, that's what's happening. So
Yep.
it's really going down.
Yeah,
I
that's
just
a Saturday, and I put the plug in for some gender inclusiveness, that not just Big Mama's house, but Granddaddy's house.
Yes.
Let's keep it together there.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely, because they are, and unfortunately, a lot of our kids don't know the importance, or even folks my age that are in their early 50s. We have our homes, so we don't look at it like, well, I ain't trying to live in granny house, but they don't realize what granny and granddad had to do to get that house. Now, other people see the value in that house. They may have bought it for 10, 15, $20,000 way back then, and now it's worth, five, $600,000. But because nobody want to deal with it, it may have some issues. They're snatching them up, putting a lipstick on a pig and turn around and selling them, for crazy, where we need to stay in our communities. And our conversation is, no one can gentrify our communities if we don't give it to them.
Cool. So, share with us a little bit about the challenges now in getting property, acquiring property, with high housing rates and interest rates that are higher, and what are some of the strategies to to kind of combat that. We've had someone who came on about a year and a half ago and talked about taking a single lot and putting 3 and 4 units on that single lot property, and so helping to do that. So what are some of the innovations that are inclusive in this presentation?
Just that, something that you said, we are seeing a lot of the development that's taking places where they're taking some of the older homes that may have sat on bigger lots and they're extending them. We are seeing more multi-generational families living amongst each other. I'm seeing that more in my clients who are Hispanic than African American though. It's nothing for them to go and add on and have 2 or 3 families within one lot. I do have a couple of people that that are African American that have done that, but it's a practice that I'm seeing more when Hispanics are buying. So that's an option. Some of the issues that we are having is the appraisal bias as it comes to purchasing the homes or even selling the homes in different communities. We're dealing with that. So we know it's an issue. So organizations like NAREB, we are making sure that we're having a seat at the table with the Appraisal Foundation, putting programs in place to make sure that there are more people of color that sit on those boards that are even becoming appraisers. It's like 1% of people that are appraisers, they're not African American. So, you know, we have some of those issues going in there. I know you guys have seen the stories and the conversation that they say, well, you know, if a Black person sells, you know, come in, take all your family photos down and unblack it a little bit. So we're just trying to make sure that we're fighting against that. We still have the issue with down payments and credit. Now, it was once where we were telling people, well, we can get you financed at this, you know, if your credit is here, but now they keep increasing and increasing what that score looks like. When we got in a little bit to get to that one point of the credit, now it's going up a little more for what you can have for, you know, just to get into a house. So we see that as an issue. So now we have to do more credit counseling and teaching people how to really work with the credit. And we're pushing to make sure and using a lot of the banks who are looking at different things like your rental history and looking at that as far as that, you know, credit. How have you been paying your cell phone bill? Things that people actually have, you know, in our communities. So that's an issue that we have that we're pushing forward and advocating to overcome as well. So it's a lot of different barriers that we continue to have. It seems like every other month, every other 7 months is something else, another obstacle. So I say down payment is one of the main issues, and the interest rates. We are now seeing the interest rates are stabilizing. The difference is with the rates, because when I bought my first house, it was like at 7%, but I've heard from some of my colleagues when they bought their first house, the norm was like 14%. The difference is now the house prices are so high. You know, in Atlanta, our average home price, you know, a couple of years ago was just $250. You can get a nice house. I bought my house, 5 bedrooms, 3 bath on a basement for $250 something thousand. I know you guys out in Cali like, what? But yes, that was, you know, the average sales price. Now fast forward just a few years and it's now 350, 400, you know, and you're looking at it like folks' salary didn't go up to meet that. So we're now seeing people still being held bondage in renting because we do have that higher interest rate, higher home prices. So the $1 million question now is, how do we get past that? How do we continue to make sure that there still are some affordable houses? One of the issues that is huge is the hedge funds. They're able to come in and get these large lump sums of money and go into neighborhoods and they can just buy them out. They can, you know, buy portfolios at a time. So we're trying to advocate and push for some legislative to be placed where you can't just go in and buy up communities like that, you know, save some of the, you know, homes that should be for a first-time home buyer. So that's one of the issues that we're seeing is corporate buying in houses that should be for that first generation home buyer. So that's some of the issues that we have. And to answer your question, how do we combat that is we have to stay in the face of our legislators. Right now in this political climate, we're seeing that it's becoming even more difficult. It was difficult before, but we were getting a little leeway because we did have some of those programs that were out there that can offset the cost. But now, I mean, I've gotten calls while people are under contract now that the funding is not there because it's cut. So while we're still having some, they haven't cut everything yet, but a lot of it is on the chopping block. So now we're scrambling to figure out, what do we do? And the main thing that we know that we have to do is just to continue to fight for it, continue to speak up on it, continue to support some of the organizations like the National Fair Housing Alliance that's pushing and making sure that they're filing lawsuits based on the unfair practices that we're seeing happening right now in housing.
Got it. I have one more question, and I'll turn it over to my other co-host here. So one of the things that happened over recent years here in California was something called ADUs, additional dwelling units, where you could put the zoning was relaxed, where you could put a rental unit. So people either redoing the garage or getting rid of the garage and putting up a structure. Is that also happening in the Metro Atlanta area?
I live in a red state. And in some of the counties, but they don't really like that. They don't like it. It's county by county, like it's a lot of red tape with it. Some of the counties, they do have them, but very, very, very few. We are pushing for that because we know that that is a way for ADUs, for tiny homes, for it to be a point where we can get people in housing, but it's not a favor of our local administration here in Georgia, in the good old state of Georgia.
And just a question either you or Stephen can answer. So the Metro Atlanta area consists of how many counties now? Because it usually was just like Fulton County, you thought of it, but now is it like 6 or 7 counties?
9.
Wow.
9. It's massive. It's massive. And we're moving out. I mean, and it's growing. We have so many people coming here. California, New York, upstate DC, the DMV, because they're being outpriced in that area, and we're still rather, cost efficient to people that come from those areas. When they come and see what we can still get for $400,000 or $500,000, they're like, sign me up, because what they can get in California or what they can get in the DMV area is completely different. So we're getting a lot of people that are continuous to come in from the South, not from the South, but from the West and from up top that are coming here because it's still affordable to them. It's affordable to us Georgians. Some of the stuff that when I get a pre-approval and it's like $250 and I'm looking through the system, I'm like, dang, I don't want to go show these people this house. I don't even want to show them what $250 can buy. Make me feel guilty for what I have, but that's just where we are right now.
That's a down payment out here. We got Stephen and then Robin. Stephen, did you have something? You had your hand up and I saw Robin's hand up, or you?
I should add that talking about look at the mass migration to the South. I mean, in my own social circle, there's about 30 of us that we get together once a month, and we're all from California. Have you seen a mass migration? If so, you mentioned certain parts of the country, because in LA, the average price of a house probably like 1.5, 1.3 million, while you're talking the average price of a home in Atlanta is 350. How can people from the West Coast make that leap to take advantage of the low-cost market in the South?
Call me. Call me and my team. So what we do, so my business partner and I, we go around the nation. They've had 2 back-to-back tours. They did I think the culture tour was first, and then the legacy tour. So we went around the nation speaking to housing. And when we hit like the California area, the amount of people that say they want to move because the cost is just way too much. And when I heard that, the average house, like 1 million and $750,000. First thing I was thinking of, like, goodness, where do they work? What do they do? How do you afford it? Even students, we had people that were interested in getting their license, and they were, students, and they're coming and they're saying that their, apartments that they're renting is $3,000 and $4,000 a month. And I'm like, oh my goodness. But I think the main thing is to reach out to a real estate broker, just to make sure that you understand that transition. And even sometimes they feel as if, okay, well, I want to come in, I want to buy this house. I've always lived here. So, I'm selling my house out west, and I'll have, a couple $100,000, but they may have that couple $100,000, but then they also still need to make sure that if there's any part of it that's going to be financed, that they, make sure that they're on point for the financing piece. I did have someone before where they felt like, well, I got a huge down payment, but there's still things that the lenders look for that additional. You may have $200,000, but if you need them to still finance $250,000, they still need to make sure that you're financially fit, your paperwork looks good. Another thing I tell people to get with their tax attorney. I don't speak to this level. It's not my lane. I'm familiar with the 1031 exchange, but I'm a licensed broker to help you find your house, but to direct you as far as how you do your taxes and your, the stuff like that with the IRS, go to an attorney, a tax attorney for that. And that would help them if they're going to switch and buy up. I've seen it happen, and a lot of people are doing that. They're speaking to the pollution out on the West Coast. Every time I go, it's beautiful. I don't see any of that. But a lot of people are just saying the cost is just getting to be too much for the average family. So making sure too, I usually tell my agents to match them up, kind of listen to that person, where they're coming from. What would be a perfect match for them? If you're used to Rodero Drive, you may want to put them in Buckhead, or just different areas, without it being a fair housing issue when I say match them up, but a lifestyle. What does their lifestyle look like? Do they want to move more towards the suburbs where you may have a little more land? You may, not be in the hustle bustle of the city, but still have accessibility. So it's pretty much making sure that you get that right professional that look at everything to make sure that you have apples to apples as you're doing the transition. Because what I'm hearing, it can be a culture shock sometimes. Some folks that have come and they've moved here, they're like, dang, it's a little slow down here in Atlanta. But I'm from Grand Rapids, Michigan. So I heard someone say, where is she from? Grand Rapids, Michigan. And it was completely segregated when I left. So when I came down to Atlanta for school, I said, I don't never want to go back. So it was a culture shock for me to see different things, and even how I live. Now, when I go back home, I'm like, now I would have to live somewhere completely different than where I lived from when I came back, because now my lifestyle has changed. So you would have to get that professional that can really understand that and make sure you're in the right place, so you're not wasting your money. And they won't look at you like, oh gosh, I got a horrible agent. Because if you're the best, they may shout you out, but if you're the worst, they really gonna shout you out.
Marvetta, you've done a fantastic job informing the audience about what's happening in the real estate market. I came here in 1977 with a journalism degree and became a loan officer because I'm a storyteller. And one of the stories that I always tell is the fact that Black people, when they could not legally sign their name, proper, they were able to buy property. So we know what to do. The sad part about it is we're not willing to sacrifice. If you're gonna, I believe everybody has to dive into the pool, because if you're renting, you're paying someone's mortgage. And people always say, well, I don't want the responsibility. No, you have the responsibility, because don't pay that rent. And that rent is paying for the landscaper and you name it. And so what I love that you just said, and I think it's critically important, we have to educate ourselves so that when we come talk to a broker, we have some semblance of understanding of what is going on in the market. And what tends to happen is people wait on somebody else to tell them what to do. They don't have the information, and then they want to question what you're telling them, right? Lending is a very rote process. It kind of does not change. So nothing has really changed except these price points. The other thing about people talking about relocating, they don't take into consideration what an experience looks like when you're on vacation versus when you're actually going to live there. When I tell people about moving to Atlanta, you got Atlanta and then you got rural Georgia. So you're not moving to Atlanta, you're moving to Georgia. You're moving to a red state, as you mentioned. The utilities. You know, so there are some things that people don't look at from an offset standpoint. And yes, you're right. It's expensive here because the sun shines 360 days a year. I ain't going nowhere. I'm originally from St. Louis. But what I did do is get myself into a first-time homebuyer program. To your point, they support you with your down payment. They help educate you. They help you to understand what the appraisal says. And really and truly, appraisal is a formula. It's not even a science. So most people don't take the time to read their own appraisal. And then I don't send me some white guy from Orange County talking about appraising my property in Inglewood. So if you don't advocate for yourself, I thank you for what you're doing. And I thank you as Greg mentioned about the Realtist event that's going on. There are folks out here wanting to help and willing to help. And then the final thing that I will say, ADUs, you're looking at about 300 square feet for 1 or 2 people versus prefab or manufactured housing, where you can create like a courtyard style environment where you have units that folks can actually move into and rent. So if the lot is big enough, that's the way I would go versus the ADU. And that's more residential housing than an ADU. Most people see ADU as it historically has been temporary. But again, it only, it's small and only house 1 or 2, maybe 1 or 2 adults and a single person with a small child. And then they're going to have to relocate. But I always just say, buy the worst house in the best neighborhood.
Yep.
And instead of looking for a single family, look for 2 or 3 units on a lot. Or is a lot big enough to add that? My question to you is, my first house that I bought, we did a acquisition rehab because it was the best house. I mean, first house, good. So it needed some work. And I think that people, and you may want to speak to this, people don't think about the fact that, are the bones good? It might not be the prettiest house, but are the bones good? Roof, plumbing, electrical, foundation. Those 4 things right there is what you're.
Yep.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, and like you said, the bones. And you're speaking to what we tell people, hey, talk to your loan officer about a 203K. That you can go in and the house may be stable. It is what you need. We all say when we talk about real estate, location, location, location is where you want to be. You go in there, it's sturdy, and you're looking at cosmetics. I have people that come in and say, oh, I don't want this house because of the paint. I'm like, really? This is cosmetic. The cabinets, they don't have this. You can change that. If you get somewhere where the location works and the price works, go for it. And then I also tell them, like, Robin, and you'll give them a pre-qualification letter. They may be pre-qualified for $450,000. So they'll call me like, oh yeah, I got pre-qualified for $450, but yet I've gotten to know them and I know their conversation. So I know they have daycare, they're going to have this, they're going to have that. And I tell them all the time, I don't want you just to be house poor,
right?
And I make my money based off of the sales price of the house. I get a percentage of we have to say compensation now on the new rules, compensation on the sales price. However, I want repeat buyers.
Clients.
I don't want to stick somebody in a house and then knowing that it was not affordable to them and then they end up losing it. And I also believe in making sure that you're in the house, how to keep you in that house.
Yes.
So if you're at the top of what they say you can get, don't go get it. Ask your loan officer. And I love my loan officer partners, whereas they keep it real with them and say, listen, this is what you can get, but based off of what I can see and what I'm seeing, this would be more so of where you should stay. you know, and they're just not looking at it like, okay, well, if they buy at this end, then I'm gonna make sure, you know, because that's going to help me. Because at the end of the day, you want to sleep at night.
Yeah.
And we want to stabilize our community, because if not, you get them in that house, and then in a couple years, or if anything happened, if they take sick or anything, you know, the husband may lose his job, whatever, then you're stuck. You know, and the thing, like what you said about renting, and I tell people all the time, and they say, well, you know, I don't want the responsibility. I always say you're paying somebody's mortgage. So get in there and pay your own. And then the thing with renting, because it happened to me, and I'm a transparent broker. I tell people all the time, I walk this walk because I know what my journey was with housing. You know, I was a single mother with 2 boys with a Section 8 voucher. But I knew one day that I wanted to be a homeowner, and I wanted my kids to see home ownership. So I know what it can be done, but I had to change my mindset, right? So when you go in and you tell them these things, I know the different programs. When I had my first house, it was, what was it? The Obama had put it out there, the hardest hit fund. So when, you know, I was in the real estate world, you talked about the property management, everybody was selling during that time. They were selling left and right. So when it was my turn to be laid off, then I needed those programs. If I was renting, I would have been out. If I didn't have my money on the 15th, they was doing the eviction. But because I had a house, they didn't want those keys back. They didn't want the property back. So they had programs out there to say, okay, let's take this, what you're behind, give you enough time, no payment, low payment, catch up, and we'll put this at the end of your note. They're not going to do that with a house. And sometimes I feel as if in our profession, we don't speak our truth, but our truth can save somebody. They may see where I am now, but it was not always my story and my truth. So if I can come at you and tell you some of the mistakes that I did, you know, when we purchased based on the higher income of the two, you know, so then when the rubber had to come meet the road and one income was gone, then we didn't look at it like, well, maybe we should have just said, let's get pre-qualified for the lower income that we can have, or we base everything off of that. So if one person is out of work, we still will be okay. And these are conversations that we have to have with people within our community, because like you said, we can purchase. It's all about education and making sure that we know what to do and how to do it. Because people that don't look like us, they're having these conversations. You know, I just left a conference last week. It was a real estate impact. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Oval Conference. And most of it was with investors from family offices that their net worth is over 40 and 50 million. I was sitting in that room in the conversations like, what?
Yeah.
You know, where they're speaking on, you know, well, yeah, you know, I have companies where what we're doing is we're speaking to the kids on the Gen Zers, how to handle the family wealth when they get it. And, you know, these 20-30 million dollars. And I said, wow, my conversation is making sure like, look, you get out of renting to purchase. So we need to make sure that we're understanding that this is what we need to be telling our kids, because they're telling their kids that. And we're right now, what we're seeing, it is the haves and the have-nots. And like we said in the beginning of the conversation, that wealth that's passed on. I was listening in this room where one guy talked about his family wealth started in the early 1900s that's just been passed on, you know, and these are millions and billions of dollars. We're saying, come on, guys, let's just pass on. Let's make sure we have an insurance policy. Let's make sure we have a house, you know, to have something. So we have to start there, and then we're going to continue. And some of us are in that position. We got our folks that have the millions, but we need to start where we are.
Well, to your point, you know, you have people, was in Lincoln Heights. It was 10 Hispanics bought one house. Right. And every year, those same 10 people came back, so that by the time they bought up the whole neighborhood. Because they worked as a community. The other thing one of the biggest faux pas that we want to drive the latest car. We want to dine at the finest restaurants. We want to go on vacation. You know, it's really called sacrifice. It
Absolutely.
really, really called sacrifice. When my husband and I were trying to buy our first house in 1979, all we said was, if it ain't free, we can't go.
Mm-hmm.
If it's not free, we can't go, because we were on, you have to hunker down. You have to hunker down. And you've been exceptional talking about the multiple levels of resources that are out here that we just don't take advantage of. And now that the market has gotten crazy, some of that stuff is being pulled back, but it's been sitting there. And to your point, I used to work for Century Housing Corporation, and folks they were in the Century Freeway program. They were paying 30% of their income for rent,
Yes. Wow.
late, paying $150 a month, showing up with a Gucci bag, nails, weaves, and driving a Mercedes, talking about, can you help me? Why would I? You already
Right.
got help. You got
Right.
70% of your money that you did not have to pay in rent. Where is that money and what are you doing with it?
Right.
So to your point, we can talk about what these other communities are doing, but let's talk about what we know we can do. Because
Absolutely.
when we put our minds to it, we can get something done.
Mhm.
And then
tell
the
people
other
all the
thing that
time,
I
you
will
can't.
say, and I want you to speak to this, and when we're in times like we are right now, opportunity abounds. People are losing their jobs, which means they could potentially be losing their property. And
Mhm.
so they don't necessarily have to give it back to the bank. If somebody's been pre-qualified, got some down payment, work out a payment, work out a relationship. So them little ladies at your church, them little seniors at your church, people that don't go to church, this is what you miss out on. Those people want to sell their house to somebody that looks like them, because they've had those houses for 40 and 50 and 60 years.
Yeah.
And Marvetta, I know you got those stories where people have decided, I like that couple. I like that person because they're going to buy my house. That's my house. You know what I'm saying? Talk about
Mhm.
that.
Yes. First of all, when you talked about the Gucci and this, I'm like, yeah, come on, give me a break. It don't match for you to have a Land Rover and a landlord. They don't match.
Speak
It
the
doesn't
truth
match.
clearly, sister.
It doesn't match. And we have to get back. I mean, I'm gonna just put it out here. We got to get back to church for real. Grand
Mhm.
Rapids, Michigan, I tell people all the time that I was raised with a phenomenal pastor. If I don't remember any address I ever had in Grand Rapids, Michigan, I remember 510 Franklin Street, Southeast, Pilgrim Rest Missionary Baptist Church with the late, great Reverend Dr. Maurice Jones. But when you go to the place, and we all know in our community, that's where everything happened, in the church. But nowadays, people just church. And I
Yeah,
hope I'm not offending anybody, but people are just
tell it.
churching. It's like you go in, there's no really fellowship, and it's what you do, it's part of your thing. You have to be part of the who's who type of churches and this and that. That it's a thing now. It's just churching. That's what I call it. But it used to be where that older couple, where you after church, you was able to sit and you met with them, and they knew if you was talking too much in the choir stand. But we're not having conversations with them anymore because we just churching. So they're not able to tell you, I saw you and Mimi up there talking. Don't let me come up after you after service next week. Yes, Miss Castleberry.
That's right.
But
Yeah,
now
yeah.
it's not like that anymore. So we don't know what's happening. We don't know who has X, Y, and Z because we're going in, we're getting our church in because it's what we have to do. We're leaving early because we don't want to be in all the traffic that leaves from the church. So there's no conversation that everybody is having to figure out what is going on. How can they help? These programs that are out there. We had an event, part of Realtors Week, the other day. I was flying back in town, so I was late. So I come in as the president, and it was our mixer. It was at one of the local pubs. It was like, we getting out, we're having a good time as realtors. I tell you, it was standing room only because it was the boots on the ground mixer. No joke. We've seen the memes, but we literally had the boots on the ground mixer. So I'm running in from the airport and everything, and I come in and everybody's like, "Oh, Madam President, Madam President." I looked around. And then I had already knew Sunday started the first day. And it was a day at church with the president in the historic West End. It was 6 of us. 6 of us
There you go. There you
that
go.
was at church.
Yeah.
6. That Monday, when they spoke on Advocacy Day, I asked them how many showed up. She said about 10. But Tuesday night, when it was
Mhm.
time for boots on the ground, it was they was in there in their cowboy hats and their cowboy boots. And I said, no shade that I can't dance. We all know I can't dance. I'm not shading y'all. However, I want to see you all the rest of the week. Today was fair
Priorities.
housing, so I'm still here, and it was 20 of us, but I'm saying this is what we have to do. We're saying we're advocates for housing. We need to get out and understand and come together in those respects. And I don't want to be on a soapbox, but you just said it, priority. We have to make it a priority. If not, we'll see. We are the bottom. We are at the bottom when it comes to home ownership. Everybody has surpassed us. Everybody. So I'm tired of fighting. I'm gonna continue to fight, but I'm a little tired now, So
I hear you.
make
I
sure
I
we
spent 30 years doing commercial real estate construction financing, and people can say that I'm mean. I know I'm rigid. I'm rigid because I've been behind the curtain and I don't know how the game go. This coming Saturday, we met in I just want to mention that this coming Saturday, we're doing a summit in Altadena. And the summit is strictly for the Black families that live in Altadena to
Yes.
not just say, well, they're offering me $1 million for a lot and walk away. Well, where are you going with that money?
Right.
You still got to have some place to live. Even if you're moving out of state, have a plan before you
Yes.
sell and get this money and get 30% tax knocked off of it,
Mhm,
because you haven't talked to one of these tax consultants. This is we're back to the financial education piece is so critically important.
Yes, yes. We have to get back to where we were once was and be open to listen. I
Mhm.
tell people all the time, I love sitting amongst our elders and
Yes.
hearing what they have to say and leaning on that. We don't know it all, and just saying, okay, what can I do to help? And even raising our hand when we need help. That was another thing when you mentioned about people, and we're seeing that these, people are not going to be able to start paying their bills and they will ignore what's coming in the mail. We have resources out there. We have what we call the NID Counseling Agency, and that's a resource. It's a national organization through NAREB, and they have it where they will speak to your lender for you. They have these resources to help you modify your loan and your mortgage and get because there's resources that are out there, but people don't speak up.
Yeah.
You cannot be too prideful.
Crystal?
So first of all, awesome. Thank you. Marvetta. But I think with our young people, which did not happen with the group that's in between the young today and those of us that are baby boomers, on whichever end of the baby boom you are on. There's not been any deliberate conversation. Sit your children down. Explain what your household finances are. This is how grandma, mom, and dad and I got our house. This is what we did. I noticed other ethnic groups besides the Hispanics. I know the Filipinos and some of the Samoans. What they do is and I think, Robin, you said this, one moves into the community and then they bring everybody else. They help each other get there till they have their the whole street is everybody in that one family. And I think that's important. But I think most importantly, we know our children have a disjointed view of what money is about because they see it on all of the videos with all of the rappers. They look like they're living high on the hog. What they don't understand is that they're in deep debt to whomever they is their producers or their managers. And so basically they're not making any of their money. They're probably making 2 cents out of all of the millions that's being made for someone else. So we have to sit down with our children and create as Greg calls it, the financial competency from the age of 5. We don't wait till they're teenagers. We start teaching them as soon as they understand the first time they ask you, can I go buy candy? That's when you sit them down. So if that's at 2, that's at 3, then you start explaining to them what that is and teaching them about your legacy. What has happened in our grouping, our families are, we're not doing that. We're not having those conversations with our children. So they think, paying rent is fine, right? But it isn't, and it is to their advantage. We also don't use the tools that are out there, the wills and the trusts, to make sure that is passed down to generations. And then when that happens, we're not preparing some child in our family to be the designated person that's going to get the house. It doesn't have to be your children. It could be your nieces and your nephews. Then we have to structure it. If mom and dad are in their 70s and the house is paid off,
Watch out now.
Use a reverse mortgage, because if mom and dad are in their 60s, they're not going to die until they're 90, but they're going to need help before that time. And from 60 to 90, that's almost 30 years, you certainly can make one of your children the designated inheritor person, making sure their credit is good, using life insurance policies to make sure the down payment is there when it comes time to refi the house, to put it back in their name, making sure there's a damn trust in place so that the child, that it doesn't have to go through probate and it doesn't have to go through change of property taxes. We need to be more deliberate about how we do that, because no one in school, hell, they don't even get to learn about their own history in school. So you certainly know if they're in a white school, they're not going to teach them how to be create generational wealth. They don't want you to have generational wealth. So we got to stop depending on that other group to teach our children what they need to know. Because I can guarantee you, in the Hispanic family, in the Jewish family, in the Asian family, they're all teaching their children what it is supposed to happen when mom and dad is no longer working and it's time for retirement. They're not leaving that up to somebody else to do that. They're doing that. So we need, and I said that when I was speaking on Saturday, we have to be very deliberate. Sit your children down as soon as they understand what money is, as soon as they start asking for money, and teach them. And there's a game with my nephews. We started playing when they were in their early teens, cash flow. And that became a weekend game that we played. And so they could find out what it takes to get out that rat race, to get into the one percenters, and be able to make money and continue to make money hand over fist. They're not going to be, the only handout they're getting is this piece of property. So use this piece of property, just like Donald Trump used the $400,000 that he blew away, and the diamond mines that Elon blew away. It's not that they're any more responsible, because they're not. Right. But they have a privilege that's been passed down to their parents, and they've been taught what money can do for you and how to manipulate money if you have to. That's the only difference. We're not teaching our people and children how to do what they do. So if we're going to learn any lessons from what is happening in white America today, that's the lesson you need to learn.
Here's a different take on it, on the slogan. They're not like us.
Right.
Right.
They're saving their money. Okay. They're not spending.
Yes.
They're not like us. We spend.
Right.
They're not like us. Yeah, there you go.
Right.
So we have to.
Something that we have to do as well, that I've seen and experienced. Once we made it, through, or feel as if we got over the hurdle, our thought process is, well, I just want to give to my kids. I don't want them to have to experience what I had to experience.
Yeah,
that's a mess
So
up.
that's such a big misconception, and we've done it because we didn't know better. I could go back and say, like, gosh, I wish I would have done this with my older two sons, but I was so it was so important to me at the time that I want them to have what I didn't have. I didn't want them to feel as if they were any different from the neighbor next door, where they had both their mom and their dad. So I did extra to give this or to give that, and woke up one day and was like, oh my gosh, what have I created?
The monster. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and the thing is that it's okay to be able to be in a position to offer them that, but the story goes with it, right, Marvetta?
Yes.
When you tell the story of the struggle, and
Right.
this is what I'm doing, but let me tell you how I got here in order to be able to do this. And I think that that's what Crystal's talking about. We have to tell these stories. That's why I always bring up the story of the sharecropper. You know, we were legally could not sign our name. We legally could not buy property. My mother bought her house in 1971 in Normandy, Missouri, and a white woman closed the escrow for her. And when she went to pick up the keys, the wig fell back off of these white folks. But she was determined to get into a house.
Yeah.
Right.
So, you know, we know how to make a dollar out of 15 cents. We know
Yeah.
what to do. You've been exceptional. You know, you're
you.
now you know you're a part of our correspondence team.
Okay.
So don't you know when you come in with good information, you become a correspondent. So don't be thinking that we got to send you an invitation. We want to see you show up from time to time and give us our updates. Okay.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and we just have to be much more deliberate, man. We're not doing what we're supposed to do. We're allowing somebody else to mandate how, and those somebody else's that we're mandating, and we want to show our children what to do or us to do. They have no desire for us to be in that position in the first place. So we have to recognize that is what is happening. But thank you so much for joining us. And yes, please continue to come back and talk about it, because home ownership is very, very important. And literally, I tell my sister, she's a broker, and I always say, you know, and the same thing with those of us that are in business. We make an assumption because we know it all and have done our work and study that everybody else does, and they don't. They really don't. Young people today don't know how to do that. And yes, California is expensive. But if you're looking, especially those that are going to school out of state, if that is something you want to do, but of course, it's always good to be where the family is. But there are other states in this country that are welcoming, and there are blue states in this country that are welcoming that have a lot. Because I'm sorry, Marvetta, my mother moved out of Alabama when she was 26 because she said I was too outspoken and I was sure that I would die before I would leave. So she moved to Buffalo, New York. So needless to say, I am my mother's daughter, and I've been to the South a number of times. I am just not that person that needs to be living in the South, because I would not make it there, because I can't handle folks telling me to call them yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am. That doesn't work for me. So you got to know yourself. So I
Yes.
know I could never live in any red state with the white folks that are in there today. I'm not all that partial to them. And if I am, they're going to have to be much more lenient and much more liberal than they are
Right.
for me to be able to embrace them. So I just know who I am. And I'm all about being Black. And
Know thyself.
I know myself, and I cannot be Black in places that want to hang me on a tree. So that doesn't work for me. But there
It's
are
going on behind the orange curtain too, right here in California.
Oh, well, yeah, I don't go to Orange County that often. That's why I don't live down there. I know who I am. Yeah, but there are other places that you can. There are even places in California. If you take your whole family there, then there's your community, right? There you can buy property in San Bernardino and Inland Empire. If you want to live out in that area, depending on what your needs are. But you do have to recognize what those needs are in order to do that. But most importantly, if we teach our children, especially those that have homes, and you want to pass it down, make sure you're teaching your children what that looks like and what that is going to require, and then have a plan. Don't let mom and dad get old and not have a plan. And there are tools. Reverse mortgage is that tool if you use it properly. If you don't use it properly, then no, it's not. And so we got to think about what that looks like. So for our young people, we have two Jasmines on the line that are young people, and we are so happy that they're here.
And me.
Yeah, okay, Greg. That's where it is. And so we have to be more deliberate about what we want to happen. And because I can tell you, the other people in this country are very deliberate about what they want.
Absolutely.
Very, very deliberate. They've been working on Project 25 for almost 25 years. That wasn't something they dreamed up yesterday. And if we don't do what we're supposed to do, Project 25, none of us going to be living in the United States. We're going to have to find another country to live in, because they don't want you here. And they're making that very well known. And so we just have to be like our ancestors. Our ancestors went through far more than we did, but they didn't do that willy-nilly. They knew how they did. My grandmother raised 13 kids, and she had property, and she made sure she raised them to make sure she was going to be okay when she got to be older. And all of them married, all of them went to college, and my grandfather died when my aunt was 14 years old, and she did that by herself. So that's how you keep on the legacy of your family, is being very, very deliberate. We want to thank everyone. Next week, we have Arna Fulcher, right? I believe, Robin, you've invited Arna.
Yes.
So what did she do?
Arna is an insurance specialist. So
Okay.
she's going to be talking about, some of what's going on with these insurance policies and the things you need to look out for. She wrote a really great article in the Sentinel newspaper, and I asked Stephen to extend an invitation to her. Here we are again. Marvetta talked about it. You've talked about it. Steve's talked about it. Greg's talked about it. There are tools out here that we can use, but if we don't get the information, then we don't know how to use those tools. So insurance is very, very critical. And especially with the people from the fires being underinsured, not insuring, and really not even petitioning the insurance commissioner to force some action. So, here again, it's called active engagement. We cannot sit on the sidelines. There are no sidelines. There aren't.
No, you gonna be drawn into the action whether you want to be or not. So thank you all, and thank you, Marvetta. Please come back. This is that place
indeed.
where we make sure that we are getting the message that we need to get to our people here, because that's really one of the things that we don't have going on, and that has not. Yes, the old church used to do that. The new church is a little bit different right now.
Zion Hill Baptist Church does that. You got to find those places where they're still trying to be the churches and the people, not the building kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And or just the pastor.
Well, you need a pastor and not a preacher.
Yeah,
There's a
exactly.
difference.
Yeah. All righty, guys. It's been awesome. Thank you guys for joining us. We're a little bit over. Have a good week. Is a lot going on. And this is not that time to keep your head in the closet, because there's a lot going on and you need to stay on top of it, because they're doing some things that we have a say so. I don't know if you guys last weekend, and it's their fight, not ours. But there were 5 million people that all around the country that protested, and there's 3.2 on Sunday. And I believe they're saying they're going to double those numbers on the 19th. So there are folks out there now, they're fighting. We're resting, waiting for them to make it right, because it's their problem, not our problem. Yeah, their rage, not our rage. And so I'm proud of my people. We sat down and let the other folks do their job.
Did you hear the white woman say, did you hear this on one of those reels? And she said, I went to the protest and there was nobody Black there. And I was wondering what was going on. And then she said, I realized that if the Black people were there and there were no police there, she goes,